Welcome to the podcast, where today we dig into a provocative notion that capitalism didn't replace slavery. It's like scaled it up.
Yeah, it's really eye-opening. How does the argument lay that out exactly?
Well, the discussion starts by challenging the traditional narrative that slavery is in the past. Instead, it posits that the system fundamentally shifted into a model where exploitation was intensified. Essentially, it argues that capitalism inherited and amplified the core methods of coercion.
Exactly. Right, so the idea is that the modern mechanisms of labor abuse, like unpaid labor and dehumanization, are in fact direct descendants of plantation slavery.
Exactly, and it's fascinating because it unpacks how unpaid labor became essential to wealth accumulation, which is pretty much how the slave system operated, yet with modern twists.
And the point is that innovation in capitalism didn't come from ethical breakthroughs, but rather from finding more efficient ways to extract labor from human beings.
Yes, that's spot on. It suggests that innovation here translates into faster exploitation. Capitalism reconfigures, scales, and even intensifies the very structures that in the past were seen in slave based economies.
Right. I love that twist. Almost feels like we need to look back at history to understand today's labor markets. What did they say about the standpoint of production?
They use that concept to argue that analyzing production from the labor standpoint offers a clearer view of how exploitation is embedded in every economic activity. It's not just about numbers and markets, but about the lived experiences of workers and even enslaved people.
Yeah, that certainly challenges the prevailing view that markets are just neutral arenas of exchange. Instead, it's really about power and coercion, right?
Absolutely. The podcast lays out how the liberal narrative of progress conveniently sidesteps these exploitative roots, painting capitalism as a beacon of advancement, while in reality, it's built on deep inequalities.
So, the liberal narrative tends to gloss over the brutal realities that both slavery and modern exploitation share.
Precisely, it criticizes the liberal narrative for ignoring how economic systems depend on coercion, from slavery to austerity measures that force market dependence and ultimately intensify exploitation.
True. And what about militarism? The discussion touched on that as a tool for maintaining that system, right?
Yes, exactly. The argument is that militarism becomes a permanent demand, reinforcing the capitalist structure by using force to keep labor in line and to keep resources flowing in a controlled way.
That's a pretty chilling yet insightful point. Using force to hold the system together. It almost sounds like the state enforces these economic horrors under the guise of security.
Right, and that ties into the discussion on the efficiency of exploitation. It argues that modern capitalism is a well oiled machine in extracting unpaid labor, much like how plantations once extracted every bit of value from enslaved workers.
Yes, indeed. But doesn't that seem a bit extreme? Is it fair to draw such parallels between historical slavery and contemporary labor practices?
It's a controversial stance, and I mean, it does ruffle some feathers. However, the evidence lies in comparing the systematic deprivation of workers' rights and the mechanisms of coercion present both then and now. It's like the same drive for profit just dressed in a modern suit.
I see what you're saying. So it's not about equating the two wholesale, but rather pointing to an undercurrent of exploitation that persists regardless of time.
Exactly, it's more about how coercion is an integral business model. And interestingly, the conversation also delves into how resistance forms from below. Enslaved people, workers, all have historically pushed back, striving for emancipation, not as a gift, but as a hard-won freedom.
That really gives people hope. Despite the overwhelming power structures, there's always a chance for worker-led resistance and change.
Absolutely, and that resistance is framed as a continuous struggle. Even today, the push for workers' rights and social reproduction is a key theme, urging us to rethink how we value human labor versus capital.
And this brings us to the role of law, right? The discussion mentioned how post-slavery laws often serve to protect capital rather than liberate labor.
Exactly. Laws have been structured to maintain this capital as relation. They don't simply abolish exploitation, they often institutionalize it. It's the twist in history, where, even after abolition, economic systems and legal frameworks were designed to preserve profit over people.
Yeah, that's a sobering reminder of how deeply embedded these systems are. It almost forces us to ask, what would true emancipation look like?
It would start by reclaiming time for life and emphasizing social reproduction instead of endless labor exploitation. True freedom requires dismantling these entrenched structures and imagining genuine alternatives to both slavery and, well, exploitative capitalism.
And it seems that a key takeaway is that change is possible, but it starts from rethinking how economic relationships should work rather than just tweaking the old system.
Precisely. This conversation is a call to reimagine a system where power and coercion are not the backbone and where labor is valued for its human worth rather than as an instrument of profit.
True indeed. I have to say, though, I respectfully challenge one point. Isn't there a risk in equating historical slavery with modern labor exploitation? That might oversimplify the complexities involved.
Fair critique. The comparison isn't meant to diminish the unique horrors of slavery, but to highlight how structures of exploitation are stubbornly persistent. It's like saying, the blueprint of human exploitation hasn't been fully erased but evolves over time.
Right, got it. And in doing so, it forces us to confront how deeply the legacy of coercion actually informs our day-to-day lives and macroeconomic policies.
Exactly. It's a radical reinterpretation that urges us to look at modern capitalism not as a break from the past, but as a scaled up version of historical exploitation. And the ongoing resistance, this is the hopeful part. It shows that change is and always has been possible through collective action.
Yeah, absolutely. This discussion really offers a lot to chew on, rethinking innovation, the role of law, and the nature of resistance. It's a reminder that economic systems, no matter how advanced they seem, can still be deeply unjust beneath the surface.
And that, in essence, is the power of revisiting history with a critical eye. It challenges us to question narratives we've long taken for granted and, importantly, inspires us to envision a future where human dignity comes first.
Well said. It's been an engaging and thought-provoking exchange.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining this deep dive today. Let's all keep questioning and dreaming of a fairer economic world.
Cheers to that.